my mind went first to stories like the Syrophoenician woman, Jesus interacting with someone who, we have no reason to think was anything other than, what people would call, using terminology of later time, a pagan, right? A Gentile, somebody who worshiped other gods. She's called either Syrophoenician or a Canaanite, and so she's part of the most hated people in the biblical tradition, essentially. And yet, I think that encounter transformed Jesus in important ways. And even there, where I thought, okay, this is one that's a go-to, and so this one will be straightforward, I found there was more impact on Jesus than I had anticipated, right? So anyone who studied the Gospels, or whether academically in particular, but also if they've just put them side by side, knows that things are not given in, this is the order that everything happened in, because if so, then a lot of really similar sounding events would have had to have happened more than once because they're in different orders. And so, if we're thinking about the logical development of Jesus' interaction with people who are not members of his own people, right, his own ethnicity, then I think very definitely the encounter with the Syrophoenician woman, where he says it's not appropriate to take the children's bread and give it to dogs, right? And it's troubling saying, right, for Christians. It's like, we wish Jesus wouldn't say that, it's like, wouldn't have said something like that. Doesn't sound very Christ-like, as some Christians might say, which is ironic. That, I think, logically has to come before him saying that, in response to, what seems like it might be a non-Jewish soldier having faith that he can heal without even coming to his house. Many will come from the east and west and take their places at the Messianic banquet, right? So they're going to be eating at the table with the patriarchs, right? And so somehow Jesus gets to the point where non-Jews, non-Israelites are being invited to the table to dine. And he's clearly not at that point in the story about the Syrophoenician woman, right? And so I think this woman actually makes an impact that we see unfold later. Another place where I had never, there were connections that arose as a result of working on the book, connections I had never made before between stories. And another one is the parable of the rich man and Lazarus in the Gospel of Luke. There, the poor man wishes he could have the crumbs that fall from the rich man's table, right? And the rich man doesn't give him any. Meanwhile, the dogs actually come and take care. Lazarus has sores, and they're coming and they're showing mercy, right? And I don't think Jesus could have used that imagery without having this woman's impact on him in mind, right? I mean, in essence, he was not willing to share the crumbs, and I think the woman, and it's not just saying even the crumbs get the dogs get the crumbs, get the scraps. If you keep the dogs from even getting the scraps, I mean, that's unnecessary cruelty to animals. Right? Like, sure, focus your attention on your own people, but if you are not willing to even let us get the crumbs, I mean, that's just, a dog owner would not do that, right? And so I think that story actually had an impact on Jesus that we can see in other places, in other stories in the Gospels.